few more people joining. Right, I think let's get cracking because we've got a good number of people already here. So hello everyone. Welcome to another CaSTCo webinar and thanks very much for coming. Today we'll be hearing from Sasha Woods, Director of Science and Policy at Earthwatch. Thanks Sasha for coming. Sasha will be talking us through the national and global reach of FreshWater Watch, starting with successes in the Evenlode Catchment, moving through to the Great UK WaterBlitz, and then discussing work with the UN and government agencies on reporting water quality in a growing number of countries in Africa. Before I hand over to Sasha, we have a few housekeeping points to bear in mind. So please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch afterwards. At the end of Sasha's presentation, we'll have some time for a Q&A. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to submit your questions throughout the session. You should find it at the bottom, and feel free to upvote any questions that you'd particularly like Sasha to answer. We've got a hard stop at 3 o'clock, so we'll make sure to get as many questions answered as we can. And then you can also share your comments in the chat box as well. So without further ado, let's get started and I'll hand over to Sasha.
Thanks, Ella. Do you see my slides okay and hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Sasha and I am the Director of Science and Policy at Earthwatch Europe. I'll just give a quick introduction to Earthwatch, if my slide will move along. Yeah, so Earthwatch Europe is an environmental charity with science at its heart. We're all about connecting people to nature and providing them with the tools that they need to fight for the planet. We want to create a world where we live in balance with nature. And we do that partly through citizen science. This is, of course, where non-scientists take an active role in the scientific research process. That can be collecting data, analysing data, but also, of course, developing the research question and disseminating the results of the research that's conducted. And at Earthwatch, we're proud to be at the forefront of the global citizen science movement. We work across 3 different impact areas. That's nature and cities, farming with nature, and also fresh water. And naturally, it's our freshwater impact area that I'm going to be talking about today. So the project that I'm talking about here is FreshWater Watch. This is a global citizen science project in which our citizen scientists measure nitrates, phosphates, turbidity, and also observational data of their local freshwater body. Nitrates and phosphates being 2 important nutrients, that these are important in low levels for plant growth, but when they are present in high concentrations in freshwater, that's when you get these algal blooms, increased concentration of bacteria, lowering the oxygen levels, and that's when you have a loss of biodiversity, a loss of plants and animals in the water. And we measure this using these tubes, which you can see in the top image there, and colour change is measured. So the more pink the liquid turns, the higher the concentration of nitrates and phosphates. We provide our citizen scientists with a card to demonstrate what the results of these tests mean. So you have evidence of low nutrient pollution is good ecological health of the river, moving through evidence of nutrient pollution and moderate ecological health, and then evidence of high nutrient pollution is obviously poor ecological health. And the nitrates and phosphate readings are combined with the turbidity readings and observational data to provide these good, moderate or poor water quality status. The data is uploaded into our platform. It appears in real time and the data is open access. And it looks a little bit like this. So you can see that we have collected over 40,000 data points. This is across the UK, but also globally. And I'll be talking a bit about both these local, national and global readings. You can see that the poor water quality is indicated by the red pins, moderate is orange, and good ecological status and good water quality are the green pins. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about FreshWater Watch's application at the catchment level, the national level, and the global level. And I'm going to start with the catchment level, focusing on the Evenlode Catchment Partnership. So the Evenlode Catchment runs about 45 miles southwest from Moreton-in-Marsh to the Thames at Cassington. And the Evenlode Catchment Partnership, the ECP, was established with the Environment Agency in 2014 to help local people and organisations work together to improve water quality, enhance biodiversity, improve flood management and resilience to climate change, and to build greater community engagement with the river and its tributaries. The ECP is a smarter water catchment pilot initiative where partners take a systems-based view of the environment and address multiple challenges and co-deliver solutions at the catchment scale. So these are the ECP partners and the projects. It's led by Wild Oxfordshire and has 30 partners, and projects are split across 4 themes. So you have water quality, which is led and primarily delivered by Earthwatch. Biodiversity, habitat and landscape is led by Wild Oxfordshire. They also lead on natural flood management. And then you have education, recreation and access, which is led by CNL. So I'm going to focus on water quality, which is the project that Earthwatch leads on. So the Evenlode was declared to be in a poor ecological state in 2014, which prompted the establishment of the ECP. And water quality is the most significant factor that determines ecological health because it affects all life in the river ecosystem. So Riverfly and other invertebrates are heavily affected by pollution. They're at the base of the food chain. So if you impact your Riverfly, you impact the entire food chain. And that's through this process of eutrophication that I discussed at the start, where you have high levels of nutrient lead to oxygen depletion in the water. So the aim of the water quality work is to work collaboratively to support ecology across the catchment and make sure that the river can achieve good ecological status. And so the objectives are to increase water quality monitoring, improve our understanding of the causes of nutrient pollution, increase awareness and campaign for sufficient and additional investments to identify and implement new solutions and improve water quality across the Evenlode. So as I said, this work is led by Earthwatch, and our role here is to manage citizen science water quality monitoring using our nitrate and phosphate testing kits, also turbidity readings, and this observational data around algae, the water colour, surrounding land use, the presence of litter. We also analyse water quality data from our 4 installed sondes. So these sondes measure 10 different water quality parameters, for example, temperature, dissolved oxygen, conductivity. They do so at 15-minute intervals, both up and downstream of 2 different sewage treatment works. We also integrate Riverfly data as well as water quality data from the Environment Agency and outfall data from Thames Water. We do have plans to extend monitoring throughout the catchment and involve the public as citizen scientists and landowners, and to train volunteers in further different survey methods. And we continue to campaign for the good ecological status of the catchment via promoting greater capacity of sewage treatment works and having fewer storm overflows, for example. So this is an example of the citizen science data that's collected. The Wild Oxfordshire and Evenlode Catchment Partnership FreshWater Watch community group sample every month. There's usually 30 to 40 samples collected, and this helps us to build a really nice picture of the water quality over time. The results are then reported back to the citizen scientists via a monthly newsletter, And you can see here that there are mostly moderate to high nutrient pollution levels across the Evenlode catchment. So our citizen science data over time shows that there's a clear impact of the sewage treatment works on certainly phosphate levels, with a significant increase downstream. So this graph shows you phosphate levels over a year. That red line is the level below which phosphate concentrations are deemed to be acceptable. You see that upstream of the sewage treatment works, that green line, you have low phosphate pollution, and downstream the sewage treatment works, that spikes right up, particularly in the second half of the year. And this citizen science data is supported by the data from installed sondes, but obviously this is more expensive to acquire and is limited to our 4 locations up and downstream of the sewage treatment works. Again, the red line is showing the level below which nutrient concentrations are deemed to be acceptable. You'll notice for nitrates on the left that even upstream of the sewage treatment works, we have high unacceptable levels of nitrate. And that is, of course, due to the agricultural runoff that also occurs in this area. The nutrient pollution is a complex issue. It's not just about sewage treatment works, it's also about agricultural runoff. The sonde data also includes dissolved oxygen levels, which, as you can see, fall dramatically below the sewage treatment works, and that's due to the effects of elevated nutrients, higher algae presence, and then increased bacteria, which leads to the lower levels of oxygen. And this is also evidenced by the decrease in Riverfly and an increase in sewage fungus in terms of our observational data. So our future monitoring plans, the next stage of monitoring will be to incorporate further parameters such as macrophytes and algae to build a more complete picture. We're also working with partners such as WASP to look at sewage treatment works data and also fish data through local angling clubs. We're working with academic partners such as the University of Birmingham and the probe suppliers to investigate parameters such as ammonium. We want to train our citizen scientists to deploy the YSI probes in areas of concern that's flagged initially by the citizen science monitoring. But ultimately, we want to collaborate with partners, with the Environment Agency and other community groups to build a better understanding of water quality in this catchment. And what do we do with all this data? We use it to advocate for the health of our rivers. So without public engagement, the water pollution crisis will not be addressed properly. This isn't a simple issue, as I said. It involves farmers, water companies, urban planners. It involves individuals coming together, sharing knowledge and developing solutions. So a big part of our work is advocating for the health of our rivers through various events, as indicated here, our collaborations, but also working with journalists and the press and decision makers, policy makers as well. For the sake of completeness, I just wanted to touch on the other projects going on in the ECP, the ones that are not led by Earthwatch. So biodiversity, habitat and landscape. Historically, the Evenlode and its tributaries have been straightened and deepened, and this leads to increased flow velocity and disconnection from the floodplain. And this increases downstream flooding risk, and it also decreases biodiversity. So the ECP has a number of projects that aim to restore the connection between the river and the floodplain, particularly a new wetland creation grant scheme that allows landowners to create wetlands in the area. Natural flood management includes tree planting projects, which also increases carbon capture along with the water uptake. And education projects include the River Schools project, which is sort of similar to a forest school, if you're more familiar with those. The main element is to develop a package that schools can then use to help them undertake field work on rivers. And the team will be piloting this scheme in selected primary and secondary schools in the area. Okay, so that's FreshWater Watch at the catchment level. We move on to the national level. and our Great UK WaterBlitz. So Earthwatch Europe believes in the power of data for change and collecting so much data that you are able to create change and to really be noticed and to make an important amount of noise about a problem. So over the weekend of the 7th to the 10th of June, we held our Great UK WaterBlitz. That's where 2,500 citizen scientists went out and took 1,300 measurements across the UK, looking at nitrates and phosphates, and also a little bit of observational data. And from this blitz, we determined that 75% of freshwater sites across the UK showed poor ecological health. We looked at this data by river basin and also river basin district. And so we found that Solway, Tweed and the Northwest have the best water quality in the UK. So there you've got 50% of data points showed low nutrient pollution, whereas Anglian and Thames river basin districts have the worst water quality in the UK. 89% of data points in the Thames river basin district, for example, were poor. And that's from 452 samples. So we're looking at a large amount of data, a robust data set, which really evidences what we're saying here. We also looked at the health of rivers by county, had a bit of a league table here. So Northumberland and Gwent on the left, 100% of the samples taken there showed good water quality, good ecological health, whereas Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire had the worst water quality. Again, you're looking at about 90% poor data points. In Oxfordshire, just because that's where Earthwatch Europe is based, you've got 81% poor based on 133 data points. So again, just emphasising here how this isn't just a one-off sampling. This is lots of people taking part and really evidencing the health of our freshwater. From this blitz, we were able to generate some our 5 key policy statements on enforcing the law. Obviously, we know that we have lots of laws surrounding water quality, but they are not often abided by. We have this stance on making pollution unprofitable, and also focusing our targets. So our data showed that streams are half as polluted as rivers. Streams are much more susceptible to pollution, so it's good that they're less polluted, but we need to do what we can to protect streams in particular, because they are often really biodiverse areas. We want to see nature-based solutions embraced. So I talked about wetlands in the ECP. One thing that we did note between the Northwest, which has good water quality, and the Thames, which has very poor water quality, is the difference in land use, and particularly in wetlands. So in the Northwest, about 9% of the land is wetland, whereas in the Thames, only 2% of the land is wetland. And obviously wetlands, particularly wetland complexes, are 5 times better at removing nitrates and phosphates from water than any of the systems we've developed on land as part of sewage treatment works. So really using these nature-based solutions to improve water quality. And finally, of course, empowering and engaging communities, individuals as well, getting them to take part in these citizen science initiatives, connecting them to nature, and also providing them with these kits to evidence the health of their local water bodies. Whilst on the topic of participants, we conducted some feedback questionnaires to find out a bit more about the people that took part in the Blitz. So 46% had no involvement in the environment prior to the Blitz. So we were really excited to engage people that aren't normally taking part in these environmental activities. And 60% of these people improved their understanding of water quality issues. So this is great, because education is such a key part of trying to generate change. And 22% also reported a positive shift in their relationship with nature. So really improving that nature connection piece. I said at the start of this section that Earthwatch Europe believes in the power of data for change, and so I have to highlight the coverage that we got from this blitz, which shows the importance of collecting a really robust data set through citizen science and generating noise about what that data shows you. And I also now have to shamelessly plug, I'm afraid, the second WaterBlitz, which is taking part of the weekend to the 20th to the 23rd of September. So if you scan that QR code there, it will take you straight to our website and you can register your interest for the next Blitz and be part of generating this data for change. Okay, so that was the national level. Going to move on to global to talk about FreshWater Watch in Africa. In Africa, we have projects ongoing in 7 different countries as part of a programme sponsored by the UN Global Environmental Monitoring System, that's UN GEMS, using FreshWater Watch, working alongside national governments. So in all of these countries, there are communities who have been tasked with monitoring water quality to complement regulatory monitoring and aid the national government to report to Sustainable Development Goal 632. So just to clarify for anyone not familiar with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 as a universal call to action that end to poverty, protecting the planet, and ensuring that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. And SDG 6 is clean water and sanitation, and the indicators 6.3.2 is the proportion of bodies of water with good ambient water quality. So this is water quality that does not damage ecosystem function or indeed human health. And it's estimated based on an index which incorporates data on 5 core parameters, these being oxygen, salinity, nitrogen, phosphorus, and acidification. So you can see that FreshWater Watch, which is looking at the nitrates and phosphates, feeds into this Sustainable Development Goal indicator. These are some of the river basins and the agencies that we are working with, and we're also expanding into a transnational basin between Kenya and Tanzania. The thing I want to highlight here is that for the first time ever, 2 of these nations, Sierra Leone and Zambia, used citizen science data from FreshWater Watch for official reporting to SDG 632. And then the quality control of all of this is done by Earthwatch in collaboration with the ministries. And there is a publication from 2022 from results in Tanzania highlighted there. This citizen scientist monitoring accurately reveals nutrient pollution dynamics in Lake Tanganyika coastal waters. So do read that if it's of interest. These are some of the typical project activities. It's all about empowering communities as well as agencies by providing more information, ensuring that communities are working alongside agencies to be part of the river basin management programs. So before citizen science activities were implemented, it was very top down from agencies to the citizens, but through citizen science they've become much more collaborative and balanced with both bottom-up and top-down decision-making taking place. So yeah, these activities involve identifying knowledge gaps and training staff and kicking off this train-the-trainer type process, and knowledge exchange between partners, expanding the citizen science monitoring, ensuring that there's feedback, that there's collaborative data analysis and quality control, and that data is integrated for SDG 632. So I'm just going to highlight a few of these case studies so you can see the impact that citizen science is having here. So in Zambia, we are working closely with the Water Resources Management Authority, and the study sites are in the Low Kafue and in the Upper Zambezi river basins. And we are now expanding into other areas known as the Copper Belt. And this is where mining activities are ongoing. Communities rely on this water for washing and fishing, so contamination with copper and the copper mining process has both societal, health and economical impacts. So we're actually expanding the FreshWater Watch methodology to include potential contaminants related to copper mining. And this is one of the advantages of our FreshWater Watch platform, is we're able to include these additional parameters and different types of data that need to be collected depending on the local context. This is the Tanzanian part of the Mara, which is one half of our transnational project. Here, freshwater watch monitoring is covering pretty much all of the sub-basins of the Mara River, which feeds into Lake Victoria and is a source of the eutrophication problems that are ongoing in this lake. A key element of the project actually is this collaboration between Tanzanians and Kenyans to monitor the issues along the river. Rivers obviously not respecting political boundaries. It's a collaborative effort between different groups of people. In the Kenyan side of the project, we're expanding the monitoring. So this map here shows the Mara Basin. We're covering all but one sub-basin, and we're also working to initiate Freshwater Watch across a further 40 river basins with the app and database and the kits that citizens can include as part of their ongoing monitoring. And this is all under the guidance of the Water Resource Authority. We work particularly closely with Fred there on the left. We are also working with communities in the largest slum in Africa. So the Nairobi River runs through this slum. People are living in quite poor conditions, but are trying to bring the river that runs through back to life through education and monitoring and cleanup initiatives. This is just a demonstration of the data that's collected along the Mara in both Kenya and Tanzania. So you'll notice that seasonal variations are important. If we're looking at phosphate levels, for example, they're higher in Kenya in the dry season, they're higher in Tanzania in the rainy season. So we have to consider the land use in these areas, as well as the impact of weather patterns, the combination of agriculture and rainfall, essentially. And that's why it's so important to bring Tanzanians and Kenyans together so that it becomes this collaborative effort. The final case study I wanted to touch on is that of Sierra Leone. It's probably, it's described as the jewel of all the projects by Stephen Lazelle. So it's a really nice one. You'll see from these maps, the map on the right there, the top one shows where Water Resources Management Agency was previously monitoring. So 18 water bodies were assessed. It meant about 350 water quality measurements per year. In the lower map, this is where we have helped to integrate citizen science data to increase monitoring to 34 water bodies and almost 700 measurements per year. So it's pretty much a doubling of the monitoring efforts that are taking part there. And the success of this has been so important for national government that they are expanding it to another region here where there are issues around gold mining. So gold mining involves a process where mercury is used to extract gold from gravel, and then it's dumped into the water. And this is one of the reasons why Sierra Leone's fishing industry has fallen apart, because they can no longer export fish to Europe due to the high metal content. So recently, citizen scientists have been using FreshWater Watch with additional measurements for contamination. And again, this just really highlights the adaptability of the method and the platform to include these additional parameters. And as before, all data are online and accessible for you to download and investigate and analyze at your leisure. I just wanted to touch on a project that Earthwatch is a partner in. It is a large EU-funded project called More for Nature. It's led by IHE Delft, and it is a 4-year project that kicked off in January. So More for Nature aims to trigger transformative change in conservation efforts regarding zero pollution, biodiversity protection, and deforestation prevention by including citizens in environmental compliance assurance. So Sierra Leone is a zero pollution case study, and it's all about involving citizens in environmental compliance assurance through the data that they generate and also their actions and behaviours. So it's all about promoting the law where applicable and safe to do so, helping to enforce it, but also using data to monitor the how well the law is being followed. Yeah, so Sierra Leone is a case study in this project. So that's FreshWater Watch, from catchment to national to its global application. I should say that there is no I in Team FreshWater Watch. This work has been conducted by a large group of us. And so if you have any questions that I'm unable to answer, I apologise for that. It's a team effort. I will do my best. And if I can't answer anything now, I'm sure I can do so via email at a later stage. But thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Sasha. That was great. And we've got a few questions coming in now, which I will dive straight into. So first up, we've got a question from Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. He outlines that there's a challenge with citizen science data in general, which is the self-selection of participants and locations, which introduces biases. So how do you deal with this in your data processing? And I think this was in relation to the Great UK WaterBlitz.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. There were definitely areas where we had more citizen scientists taking place, taking part in the event, and therefore more data collected. In terms of the analysis, we were just strict with how much data we thought was necessary to generate a reliable data set for example, per county. So in that league table, not every single county is there because a county might have only had 1 or 2 data points, and then that's not enough to be able to draw reliable conclusions. So the best way to address that is obviously by promoting the next blitz more and having more data to be able to cover those counties.
Yeah, that sounds really sensible. Did you have sort of in this first round any areas that were particularly sort of low engagement, or any areas that were particularly high as well?
Low engagement. I mean, this was a UK WaterBlitz, but we only had, I think, 7 citizen scientists from Northern Ireland. So we weren't able to do any sort of analysis for Northern Ireland. Certainly, I think the Thames River Basin District was very well tested. And I think that's just because the Thames has been in the media so much recently that people are really keen to find out for themselves what the situation is. So yeah, next time we're just hoping to be able to reach more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's exciting for September. We've got another question from James. Thank you, James. For the Evenlode catchment, is there discussion about working with the EA towards using citizen science data to initiate their own investigations? And I think Charlotte answered in the chat, and I'll read that out, and then Sasha, if you have anything to add, go for it. Charlotte said, yes, there's been discussions with the EA and the Thames about using citizen science data, and they are part of the working group as well as the ECP steering group. But there's currently limited use of citizen science data by the EA, and we're working on this as the frequency of sampling and coverage improves. Anything else to add in there?
I think that's a very thorough answer. Thank you so much to Charlotte for being here. I think also it's worth sort of drawing it's interesting looking at the situation here in the UK versus in Africa, you know, because in Africa there's very limited resources to be able to monitor all their freshwater sites. The application of citizen science there has just been really well received, and I think it would be great if that's also the case here in the UK, and obviously that's what CaSTCo is working so hard towards. So yeah, there's lessons we could learn from Africa as well, I think, here.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely know sort of in CaSTCo so far, I think a few of the demonstrator catchments are testing sort of comparing the sondes data with citizen science data. And I think you mentioned there are sondes in the Evenlode catchment that are being monitored regularly. Are you able to make sort of those comparisons between that data that's collected and the citizen science data in the Evenlode?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it a little bit, but that's certainly something that we're doing, is just making sure that the two data sets are comparable. And I think they very much are.
Yeah, great. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Jeff. Has the UK data revealed anything that we didn't already know? Or is this sort of more of an engagement PR exercise as well?
Interesting. I think it was useful in terms of assessing where there are more good water quality data points compared to poor. I think there were probably assumptions about where the water quality is worst and best. It was good to confirm that. It was also useful to note the difference between rivers and streams. I think that was useful information to know. It's certainly partly about engagement, because I think once you've engaged more people to understand the problem, you can then have more people involved in the solution process. But it's also demonstrating the fact that citizen science data generated similar conclusions to the EA and other monitoring bodies. Yeah.
Awesome. And it'll be, yeah, great to build on that in September.
Exactly.
Lovely. Okay. Now, going back to the sondes comparison point. So Sian has said she works in the USC demonstrator with the Wye and Usk Foundation, and also has sondes in that catchment. She wanted a bit more information about how those comparisons have been done with the sondes data. And actually, Charlotte's just answered.
Charlotte's jumped in.
Anything to add?
No, thank you, Charlotte. That sounds good. Yeah, cool. I'm glad, and I'm jealous of so much data. Wonderful. We should definitely talk about all this data.
Yeah, for sure. That's fab. Okay, in the Q&A, we've got another question from Tim Pickering. Are you able to quality assure the data collected? I'm guessing that might be in the UK WaterBlitz example.
Yeah, so there are some quality control questions built into the questionnaire. So we ask about the colour of the water, the surrounding land use, if you can see the presence of algae and things, and that helps us to confirm the likelihood of whether what they've plugged in is also, likely to be the case. We also check the data as it comes in terms of geolocation. So anyone who accidentally uploads the data from their house, we don't then have a river running through somebody's house. And obviously the beauty of having the Blitz was that so many people were collecting data along a stretch of river that if you had a massive outlier, you could pick up on that. So that's really where our quality control is coming from.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful to clarify. And on that point about sort of asking about water colour and that sort of thing, I wanted to go back to your case studies in Africa and the learnings that you've got from there. I think you mentioned in Sierra Leone, that example, there's like gold mining and how that sort of changed the types of monitoring that the FreshWater Watch are doing there. It'd be interesting to know do you think that there's applications in the UK for that in terms of sort of historic tin mining, like effluents and that kind of thing here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the kind of thing where if you've got citizen scientists that are engaged and doing nitrate and phosphate and turbidity testing anyway, and they feel that in their particular context, it would be useful for them to measure additional parameters, that's certainly something that we could assist with, because the platform is just so adaptable in that sense. You know, we also have some E. coli data on the platform where around Henley in particular, citizen scientists have been very interested in E. coli levels from sewage treatment works there. So yeah, I think depending on the context, adding these additional parameters to build up a better picture of water quality is absolutely possible.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's really good to know. Sorry about the cat. I've got another question while we're waiting for some more in the chat, unless I've missed any. So I think another thing that you mentioned about the examples in Africa, there's a lot of like cross-jurisdiction, cross-boundary kind of work that I think you said between Kenya and Tanzania, that you've been working on. And again, I wonder if there's sort of applications for that in the UK, particularly. I know for a few CaSTCo demos, like the team demo and the Ask, that are working kind of across those Wales-England borders, whether there's sort of reflections of how to develop those collaborations that you'd be happy to share.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's not a blueprint for making people work collaboratively together, but I think obviously understanding that rivers are flowing from one location to another, and therefore anything that's happening upstream is going to affect people downstream. So you can't solve a problem just by focusing on your county. So yes, there's definitely lessons to learn in terms of collaboration, but I'm not sure we'd solve it in this webinar. But yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important moving forward that we do have this collaboration between nations, counties, and different stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure a big learning on CaSTCo, I think. So yeah, maybe that's a whole nother webinar. That sounds good. We've got another question come in from James. Thanks, James. Is there a process for narrowing down locations of pollution point sources after the Blitz data flags those areas that are particularly poor? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that we had quite enough data to be able to say, aha, it's definitely here that's causing a problem. But of course, if you then repeated water quality monitoring both up and downstream of potential pollution hotspots, as they're doing in the Evenlode, then that's absolutely a possibility. The more data you have, the more complete picture you can build. And if we are repeating this blitz and time again are showing that upstream of this point, the water has good quality and downstream it's poor water quality, then you can start to point some fingers.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Please, everyone, keep adding any more questions in the chat if you've got. I see Jeff's just added one and caveated it with it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek one. So, is collecting all this data and putting it in the public arena really in the public interest? It raises the noise level and risks getting money spent in a suboptimal way. That's a big one, I think, for all of us.
That's a big question to think about. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think of citizen science as being science by the people for the people. So I think it's absolutely in people's best interest to know the state of the environment, and that includes water quality. I don't see the negative in raising the noise level, because I think if you have a greater understanding of a problem and more people talking about the problem, you're more likely to solve it. There's always a risk of money being spent in a suboptimal way. But I think, again, as part of this collaboration between, decision makers, individuals, sewage treatment works, agriculture, et cetera, this collaboration is so key to working out how how money should be spent. And I think something like the Blitz, which generates this interest and generates some noise, is part of that. So I appreciate the tongue-in-cheek nature of the question, but I think actually, from my opinion, is that it's worth doing.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. And for sure, I think you're right, that sort of collaboration across all of our stakeholders is, the most important part to developing, a common goal for river improvement. We've got a question from Catherine. Do your citizen scientists ever come into conflict with landowners or similar when trying to do sampling or blitzes?
It's a really good question. I mean, we are very clear when we tell people to go out and measure water quality that they have permission to do so on the land that they are walking across. To my knowledge, in the UK, there hasn't been a problem. Of course, this might be different across different countries. But it's interesting because that sort of relates to the More for Nature project work, where there's that enforcement part of environmental compliance assurance, but you have to be very careful about trying to enforce the law in certain countries where people who are breaking the law are then also going to be armed and might not be up for discussion in the same way that we might be elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a really interesting reflection on sort of how these learnings are applied in different countries, for sure. Any more questions, please do drop them in the chat. We've got 15 minutes left, supposedly. Charlotte's just popped an answer in there as well. Thanks, Charlotte. Citizen scientists should only be sampling on land where they have access. And on the Evenlode, we have agreements with landowners to access private land. For example, the 4 sondes are on private land. Yeah, that's good to clarify. Charlotte, if you've got anything else to add as well, actually, I can make you a panelist if you like. Any more questions? Go ahead. I think as well, as you said, Sasha, we can definitely pick up any questions that people might have after the session as well, with yourself and Charlotte as well. So definitely feel free to message me afterwards if there's anything that you would like to chat through. Catherine has dropped another question in. Any plans to expand elsewhere, South America, for example, with large amounts of mining there?
Yeah, so South America was included in one of our other EU-funded projects, Monocle. So we have done some sampling there. Yeah, if you check out the FreshWater Watch website, you can see the global map of where we've monitored. So yeah, it's just about finding the right opportunities to do so. But yes, certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Sasha. Jeff has said, oh yeah, this is good advice. We'd caution citizen scientists against approaching polluters directly, collect evidence, report to the EA, and let them deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the process in the UK.
Yeah. Simone has also added in here. How do you approach health and safety or risk assessments for citizen scientists carrying out their sampling?
Is that for the Blitz? I guess for the Blitz.
Yeah, and probably for the Evenlode catchment as well, if there's any learnings from there.
Do you want me to take that one, Sasha?
Yeah, I can do.
Okay, so one of the things we ask people to do is read the guidance when they sign up to become a FreshWater Watch citizen scientist. So they do that when they register. And we also provide training to people and highlight the importance of health and safety within that. That's for FreshWater Watch, but also within the Evenlode, we do citizen science monitoring using Riverfly. And again, that's 1-day training, and we highlight the importance of citizen science, of health and safety. when we are reminding our citizen scientists in the Evenlode on a monthly basis about monitoring, we also let them know ask them to check the weather and not to sample if there's going to be a lot of rainfall and the rivers are running high.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, that's good points. We've got a few more questions in the chat. So Sian has said, how do you organise the Blitz to reach the public and go out and gather samples, sort of in a logistics side to things?
We have a very fabulous communications team that did all the promotional work. So obviously that's setting a date and then promoting it across our various channels. Yeah, so I take no credit for that. That's a team of people who are much better at reaching the public and encouraging them to take part.
Absolutely.
In addition to that as well, Sasha, there's because we've run a number of water blitzes in the Thames catchment, we've got a good set of people who we know are really keen and enthusiastic about going out there and doing monitoring. So we've got that people ready to go as soon as you send them the kits and the dates. So that's
yeah.
great.
I suspect that there are a lot of citizen science groups, ready and raring to go in a lot of places, to be fair. Similarly, just thinking about the sort of more logistics side of things, Trini from FBA has said, regarding the Blitz, how do you fund it? And it must be quite costly to send out all of those kits.
Yeah, for the first Blitz, we were part funded by the WFH Foundation, and then participants were also encouraged to provide a small donation to pay for the cost of their kit. So it was a combination of funding sources.
That's good to know. Actually jumping across to your work in Africa, Sian has also said, are you seeing any changes in Africa regarding the mining countries and sort of mining companies as well?
I mean, the gold mining is not so much by companies, it's by individuals. It's really individuals along the river using the mercury. I don't know that we have been monitoring for long enough to have had an impact on behaviour change. But that's such a complicated issue, right? Because this is the economics of that is very different to how life is here. So I would say at the minute, it's not a behaviour change thing. It's still just a monitoring the issue. But obviously you would hope to ultimately have that behavioural impact.
Absolutely, yeah. And informing decision making sounds
Exactly.
like a good first step for sure. Jumping back to sort of health and safety stuff, Simone has asked, do your risk assessments cover biosecurity at all?
What we encourage people to, part of our training is for people to wear gloves when they're out doing the sampling, and to ensure that they wash their hands as well before touching any food or as soon as possible. Does that answer the question enough?
I think so, yeah. It's worth mentioning as well, I think at the moment CaSTCo is developing a sort of health and safety risk assessment protocol for catchments and citizen science monitoring, which we'll definitely be sharing externally soon. Yeah, it's good to hear sort of what sort of things it might be helpful to include in there, like biosecurity or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important thing that people wear gloves when they're sampling, and we see it so many times where people are taking samples, then they're stating that they could be high E. coli levels, and I think we've got to ensure that people aren't putting themselves at risk and that they're ensuring that they're keeping themselves safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thanks, Simone, for clarifying. Simone said she means more in terms of invasive species, sort of biosecurity side.
Oh, right. Okay. In terms of invasive species, then we don't have the ability within the FreshWater Watch programme to report those. However, I'm aware that there is an app that you can use to report invasive species if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Snapper, I think, is the one. And I guess as well, there's like kind of standard biosecurity kind of behavior when working in a river anyway, like washing your kit afterwards and that sort of thing, which is, yeah, is probably sensible to apply. We have a few more minutes before 3 o'clock. So if anyone has one final question that they want to slip in, please go ahead. James has jumped in. There was some mention of bacterial testing for E. coli. E. coli testing is something that's been done by citizen scientists. Have you used that on any site tests? The public seem more interested in safety for access as a priority.
The E. coli work has mostly been conducted along the Thames and particularly around Henley in collaboration with River Action and citizen scientists there. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's essentially where our E. coli work has been conducted.
It's good to know, Sasha. And is that citizen scientists that are carrying that out? That's something.
Yeah, and they're typically using the Fluidians to measure that.
Okay, amazing. Well, we're coming to the end of the session now. We've got not really much time. James says thank you. So I just want to say thank you very much, Sasha and Charlotte, for giving your talks today and answering all those questions. I'm sure there's probably some more questions that people might have wanted to ask. And as you said, Sasha, I'm very happy to pass on any unanswered questions to you over email, and then we can share those out along with the recording of this session for anyone who wasn't able to attend.
That'd be great. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for coming. And just for anyone else as well, if you have any future ideas of a webinar that you want to host or speak at, or even just suggest for future across the Rivers Trust movement and CaSTCo, let me know and we can set something up. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.